So 3 times in the Gospel of Mark, we hear Jesus giving this prediction of the passion, that he's going to die and then rise again. And we've heard over the last few weeks how that's happened. Jesus says the Son of Man is going to die and then he's going to rise again. And what happens? Well, Peter gives this inept response. Oh, it shan't be so with you, O Lord. And he's just like, get behind me, Satan. Okay, then second time, the disciples just like, we're not sure what to do with this, and they have another inept response. Here, we skip over that whole time. Whatever reason, the lectionary skips over this, but it is just before this section where Jesus a third time says that he's going to die. And now, the immediate response is James and John come up and say, we want to be at your right and at your left. Now, if you remember, who's at the right and at the left of Jesus in his glory? We got a couple of thieves on the cross, right? These are the ones for whom it's been prepared. And James and John have absolutely no clue. And it's not like the other disciples have any better clue, right? Because they say, well, they get indignant at them. How come you asked for it? You thought of it before we did. That it's not that they were saying, you got it all wrong. Did you hear anything Jesus had to say? But they said, you're usurping our place. And Jesus said, wrong, survey says, that's not the way it's supposed to go. Rather, what is the proper response? Whoever wishes to be great among you will be your servant. Whoever wishes to be first will be the slave of all. If you want to be at my right and my left, you have to become like me. And what does that look like? It looks like the cross. It looks like service. It looks like this love that is poured out, where he says, I am willing to give everything for your salvation. I'm willing to give everything. The line that struck me as I was praying through this gospel, it comes over and over again as I hear it, as I pray through it. It shall not be so among you. Jesus saying to his disciples, you hear what the world has to say? It shall not be so among you. And this is so hard for us to hear today. Jesus says to us, to you, to me, you want to follow me? You cannot think the way the world thinks. The world thinks power. The world thinks control. The world thinks revenge. The world thinks all these things. And he says, that shall not be so among you. I think I've shared this story before. I'm a younger brother to an older sister, which means I could be a little snotty at times. I know that's hard to believe. But there were times, I know this blows your mind, that I would actually have an argument with my sister. I know, nice Father Vaughn, never happened, right? Well, so my sister and I would be in these arguments, and I remember a few times in particular when my mother would suddenly be present and she'd be like, stop it right now. I'm sure no parent out there has ever said that to you. But so she's just saying, stop it right now. So I would stop it. And then my sister would get one more jab in. And so I'd go back to jab her again. Because I've got to retaliate. As if it's going to change anything by saying one more thing. But we're not thinking these things in our brains, right? So I go out and I give another one, and my mother says, stop it right now. And my sister gets one more jab in. And my mother looks at me and says, "Don't you dare." In more or less words. Right? But that's the mentality of the world. If you attack me, I'm going to attack you back. You know, I want to be able to get the last word in. I want to be the right person. And Jesus says, "It shall not be so among you." It shall not be so among you. How easy is it for us just to automatically retaliate when someone hurts us, when someone slanders us, when somebody puts out libel against us, for instance, on Facebook? That we want to get back. And Jesus says, "It shall not be so among you." We want to be able to lord it over others that, see, my position is better than yours. I've thought this through more than you do. What do you know? Instead, Jesus is inviting us not to power and lording it over others and retaliation, but he's saying, you have to have my mindset. Could you imagine what would have happened if Jesus had said, instead of, "Father, forgive them," if he had said, "Get him, Dad"? Well, we would all be pretty much done. That would be the end. But no, he's reaching out to us to say, "Father, forgive." He's reaching out not in retaliation. He came as a ransom, to ransom us from our sins, to break us from the power of sin and death that hold us bound. And he's saying, "I am taking this all upon me. I'm taking this all upon myself so that you can have this freedom. You can have this new life. Don't become like the world. Let my love, my forgiveness flow through you." This is just one area in our lives, but there's so many areas of my life I know that I have to change my thinking, that I'm not thinking the way the world does. And it's hard because we're immersed in this culture, right? We're immersed in the culture which tells us, get ahead, be better than everyone else, all these things, instead of, no, the best place is to serve, to take the lowest spot. I remember back, it must have been like 15 years ago, I was out at a conference, and I remember this one line. How often do you remember something that somebody says from the pulpit? Tomorrow you're not going to remember anything I said. I know, I get it, but I'm feeding you now, and you take it and you move on with it, okay. And then next week you're going to say, "What did Father say?" I don't know. Probably wasn't that important, and you're probably right. But I remember 15 years ago, I was at this conference, and this guy was up there talking about Mary. And he said, Mary goes down to the lowest place. It's where she likes to hang out, among the weakest and the poorest and the most rejected. And I said, and he was telling us, and so if you want to get close to Mary, that's where you have to go. I said, wow. And this is what Jesus is saying. It's not striving for the heights, because only a few people can get up to the heights. How many of you have ever played King of the Mountain when you were growing up, right? You got this hill or maybe a snowbank or something in the winter, and you're climbing and you want to be at the top. And I know when I was little, I wasn't that much of an athlete, unlike the man I am today. But I wasn't much of an athlete, so I rarely got to the top of the mountain. They'd be pushing me down or whatever, but there'd be every once in a while I'd finally get to the top. And then what would happen? Inevitably, within 5 seconds, someone would knock me down. There's not much room at the top. But Jesus is saying, don't go to the top, go to the bottom. Go to serve. There's plenty of room down there. There's room for everyone. So it's not like we're having to knock everyone else over to go into service. Just some reflections that I've had over the past week. So I'm saying, what is it that Jesus is saying? He's saying, it shall not be so among you. Do not take on the thought process of the world. And maybe some of these things that I've said today have absolutely nothing to do with your life. That's fine. But ask Jesus, how am I thinking like the world instead of like you? Jesus, reveal this to me, show this to me, so that I can start to invite you into that area, to transform it, and to turn it inside out, upside down, so that I'm not thinking the way of the world, but the way you do. Oh, to follow Jesus is so radically different from the way of the world. And yet it brings so much more joy and a peace the world cannot give. Let us beg Jesus for that vision to be able to see, where do I need to change my thinking? How do I need to change my thought processes so that they are in line with your thoughts, your desires, your will, not that of the world?